Under the stage lights, a 13-year-old black boy stood before 600 scrutinizing, mocking faces, mostly white. They had deliberately signed him up for a music competition to humiliate him and break his spirit. But then the moment the boy sang his first note, the laughter stopped instantly. From that moment on, they could never look at that black boy the same way again. Before I dive deeper into this powerful story, tell me, where are you listening to it from? Hit the like button if you've ever felt like an outsider, and subscribe to join us on this journey of discovery. Now let's return to the moment of attempted humiliation that sparked a silent uprising. Kai Rivers' alarm clock was a luxury he rarely used often, rising at 5:30 in the morning, a full 2 hours before most 13-year-olds stirred. But nothing about Kai's existence at Blackwood Preparatory Academy was conventional. As one of merely 10 black students among 480 affluent white peers, Kai had learned that meticulous preparation was his only shield. He meticulously laid out his uniform the night before, scrutinizing it for any detail that might attract unwanted attention. His mother, Simone, had already left for her early morning shift at Unity Medical Center, where she served as a patient liaison before transitioning to her afternoon role at a downtown architectural firm. The significant scholarship Kai had secured covered 75% of Blackwood's exorbitant tuition, but that remaining 25% demanded every extra hour his mother could manage. Kai would never utter a complaint about her sacrifice. Blackwood signified a chance, even if it often meant daily solitude. The stillness of their modest apartment afforded Kai 15 precious minutes each morning to indulge in his true passion, singing. His voice a resonant gift inherited from his grandfather, Pops. Elijah filled the compact bathroom as he readied himself for school. Pops Elijah had once been a revered blues and jazz guitarist and vocalist in the 1950s, gracing stages across New Orleans before racial barriers and family duties compelled him to step away from the public eye. He had passed away just 4 months prior, leaving Kai with cherished memories, a collection of vintage blues records, and a powerful, yet carefully concealed talent. At Blackwood, Kai navigated the gleaming corridors like a shadow, his strategy of remaining unnoticed largely successful until today. He tightened his grip on his textbooks as Ashley Sterling and her impeccable coterie approached their expensive loafers, echoing on the polished marble floors. "Did you manage to get through that physics problem set?" Ashley casually asked another girl, Bethany, amplifying her voice just as Kai walked by. "It's practically impossible unless you've had private tutors your entire life. Some people truly aren't cut out for challenging courses, are they?" The remark was hardly subtle, nor was it intended to be. Kai kept his gaze fixed ahead, his expression carefully neutral, even as a familiar flush of humiliation warmed his cheeks. In Mr. Hayes' literature class, Kai took his customary seat in the back row next to Liam O'Connell, the only person at Blackwood who was aware of his singing. Liam, with his spiky blue hair and overt disregard for Blackwood's entrenched social order, had befriended Kai during orientation when he observed Ashley mimicking Kai's cadence behind his back. "The hyenas are out today." Liam murmured as they opened their copies of Invisible Man. Kai offered a slight nod, noting Ashley's frequent pointed glances in their direction. The morning announcements crackled through the intercom, mostly concerning upcoming debate tournaments and philanthropic galas, until the final item, attention all students' applications for the annual Winter Gala of Arts, are now available outside the Performing Arts Center. This distinguished event showcases Blackwood's premier talent for our esteemed alumni and university admissions officers. Only our most proficient performers should consider participating. Headmaster Thorne's voice carried the unmistakable implication. This invitation was not for everyone. Kai recalled last year's gala where he'd watched from the back of the auditorium as exclusively white performers played classical concertos and sang operatic selections. A black junior who had performed a gospel choir arrangement had been critiqued for lack of cultural authenticity despite a powerful delivery. During lunch, Kai and Liam claimed their usual table near the cafeteria's side exit. Kai unwrapped his simple pack sandwich while all around them students discussed ski trips to Aspen and summer internships in Europe. Across the dining hall, Ashley commanded attention at the central table, her sharp laughter piercing the din as she whispered something that caused her friends to stare directly at Kai. "They're cooking up something," Liam warned following Kai's gaze. Ashley looked way too focused on that gala announcement. Kai shrugged, concentrating on his food. Doesn't matter. I'm not on their radar. But as the words left his mouth, Ashley was already gliding toward their table, her expression unnaturally cordial. Kai, I've been meaning to chat with you, Ashley said, gracefully sliding onto the bench opposite them. Liam tensed beside Kai, but Ashley continued with practiced charm. I overheard Miss Jenkins mentioning she's hoping for more variety in the gala this year. You know, not just the usual classical pieces. She leaned forward conspiratorially. I thought maybe you could participate. You could do something that you know embodies your heritage. The phrasing made Kai's stomach clench. I don't perform, he stated flatly. Ashley's smile didn't waver. But everyone should showcase their background. I'm doing a violin piece celebrating my European lineage. You could do something more spirited. Liam started to interject, but Ashley was already rising. Just give it some thought. It would genuinely enhance the school's perception. As Ashley sauntered away, Liam gripped Kai's arm. Don't trust her. Whatever she's orchestrating, it's not about embracing diversity. Kai nodded, but Ashley's words had struck a chord. Blackwood's image problem was undeniable. The school had been featured in a recent exposé about elite institutions struggling to cultivate inclusive environments. Perhaps participating would compel them to acknowledge the talent within their marginalized students. By the time vocal arts class began, Kai had pushed the encounter from his mind. Miss Jenkins, a slender woman with impeccably coiffed silver hair, was discussing the gala while distributing participation forms. Remember, this event is attended by influential alumni and university recruiters. Only sign up if you're prepared to uphold Blackwood's standard of distinction. Her gaze lingered on Kai for a beat too long. After class, as students filed out, Kai noticed Ashley lingering by Miss Jenkins' desk, glancing back at him with a smirk that sent a shiver down Kai's spine. That evening, Kai found his mother asleep on the sofa, still in her uniform from the hospital shift. He gently covered her with a blanket before retreating to his room to complete his assignments. As he studied, his grandfather's vintage blues records seemed to call to him from their shelf. Kai selected one, placing it carefully on the turntable his grandfather had insisted he keep. The soulful voice filled the small bedroom, and Kai closed his eyes, remembering weekends spent at Pops Elijah's apartment learning chord progressions and vocal techniques that his grandfather insisted were part of their lineage. Your voice is your might, Pops Elijah would often say, and they are intimidated by what they cannot dominate. Kai hummed softly along with the record, letting the music wash away the pressure of navigating Blackwood's unwelcoming atmosphere, unaware that the following day would shatter his carefully constructed invisibility. The bulletin board outside the Performing Arts Center drew a cluster of excited students, all eagerly scanning the Winter Gala of Arts participant list posted that morning. Kai passed by without a second thought, his mind occupied with the geometry quiz scheduled for third period. It wasn't until Liam came running down the hall, face flushed with alarm, that Kai realized something was amiss. Your name? Liam gasped, pulling Kai toward the board. It's on the list. Kai froze, staring in disbelief at his name clearly printed under vocal solo gospel hymn, a signature that resembled his but wasn't appeared beside it. I didn't sign up for this, he whispered, his heart thudding against his ribs. Several students nearby turned to look, including two of Ashley's friends, who exchanged knowing smiles. The realization crashed over him. Ashley had forged his signature. Kai immediately sought out Miss Jenkins, finding her arranging sheet music in the choir room. Miss Jenkins, there's been a mistake. I never signed up for the gala. The vocal arts teacher barely looked up. The deadline for entry was yesterday. Kai, your signature is on the form. It's not my signature, Kai insisted, his voice rising with desperation. Someone else put my name down. Miss Jenkins finally turned her expression cold. Are you implying another student committed forgery? That's a grave accusation. She shuffled through a folder and produced the form with the false signature. This looks precisely like your handwriting to me. If you're having reservations about your commitment, I'm afraid that reflects poorly on your integrity. Blackwood students fulfill their obligations. The implication was stark. Backing out would only validate the stereotype that he didn't fit in. What exactly am I expected to perform? Kai asked, defeat settling in his stomach like a lead weight. Miss Jenkins consulted the form. A gospel hymn of your choice. I assume you're conversant with the genre. The casual assumption about what music should represent his culture stung like a slap. Throughout the day, murmurs trailed Kai through the hallways. During lunch, he overheard a boy from his history class tell another Ashley saying the scholarship kid thinks he's the next John Legend. Another responded, "Does he even grasp what vocal technique means?" In literature class, Mr. Hayes announced they would analyze song lyrics the following week. Kai can assist us in deciphering the more contemporary selections, he said, with what he clearly believed was inclusive enthusiasm. Liam subtly nudged his desk, earning a stern look, but making his point. By the time Kai reached the humanities wing, Headmaster Thorne was waiting outside his civics classroom. Mr. Rivers a moment. He guided him to a nearby empty classroom, his expensive cologne overpowering in the confined space. "I understand you'll be participating in our gala. This is quite an opportunity for someone of your background." He straightened his tie. "I trust you comprehend the standard of performance we anticipate. This could be a chance to demonstrate you truly belong at Blackwood." The phrases "someone of your background" and "truly belong" echoed in Kai's mind as he struggled through his remaining classes. That evening, he locked himself in the bathroom, gasping for breath as panic overwhelmed him. The thought of standing before the entire student body, the unequivocal target of what was clearly intended as humiliation, sent him into spiraling anxiety. When he finally emerged, his mother was home, poring over bills at the kitchen table. "Son, you look pale. Are you feeling unwell?" Simone's voice was tinged with worry as she felt Kai's forehead. Kai considered telling her everything, but saw the deep circles under his mother's eyes, undeniable evidence of the double shifts she'd been working. "Just tired from studying," he lied. "I have a lot of assignments this week." Simone nodded, understanding the immense pressure Kai faced. "You know, I've noticed you've been quieter lately." "Is everything all right at school?" "Everything's fine," Kai said automatically, the response honed from months of concealing microaggressions and social isolation. "Just the usual Blackwood pressure." Simone studied her son's face, clearly unconvinced, but too exhausted to press further. "Well, you know you can tell me anything, right? No school is worth your peace of mind." Over the next few days, Kai withdrew further from school activities. He skipped the robotics club meeting where he'd been the only black student on the engineering team. He ate lunch in the quiet solace of the library instead of the bustling cafeteria. Liam tried to offer support, but Ashley's clique had begun targeting him too, making snide remarks about privileged supporters within earshot. The Saturday before gala rehearsals were scheduled to begin, Kai visited his grandfather's gravesite. The simple headstone read, "Elijah Rivers, his music spoke volumes." Kai sat on the damp grass, tracing the letters with his fingertips. "I don't know what to do, Pops," he whispered. "If I refuse to perform, they'll say I don't have what it takes to be at Blackwood. If I perform poorly, they'll say the same thing." The crisp autumn wind rustled through nearby trees, reminding Kai of his grandfather's words during their last conversation. Elijah had been in the hospital, his once powerful voice reduced to a frail whisper. "Your voice is your might, Kai. They fear what they cannot control. That's why they tried to quiet mine. Don't let them quiet yours." With a fresh surge of determination, Kai returned home and searched online for gospel hymns he could adapt. Monday morning brought a new challenge. Miss Jenkins cornered Kai before homeroom, handing him a folder. "Since you're representing Blackwood to our benefactors, I've selected a more fitting piece. O Holy Night demonstrates proper classical technique." Kai opened the folder to find sheet music for a notoriously challenging tenor aria, clearly chosen to guarantee his failure. "But this isn't a gospel hymn," Kai pointed out. Miss Jenkins' smile was thin. "We determined a more conventional selection would better highlight Blackwood's standards. Rehearsals commence tomorrow. I anticipate you'll require considerable practice." As Miss Jenkins walked away, Ashley appeared as if on cue, her expression a mask of feigned concern. "Oh, did Miss Jenkins give you a holy night?" "That's what I recommended. I thought you'd want to prove you can manage genuine classical music instead of something far simpler." The snare was complete. Ashley had ensured Kai would be presented with a piece well beyond most trained tenors securing his humiliation. Kai stood frozen, the folder clutched in trembling hands as Ashley sauntered away triumphant. The Performing Arts Center was silent after hours, the rows of empty seats bearing witness to Kai's solitary struggle with a holy night. His voice cracked on the high notes, his lungs burning with the effort to sustain the extended phrases. For 3 consecutive evenings, he had stayed after school, using his mother's late work hours as a cover. The gala was 3 weeks away, and the impossibility of mastering this piece was becoming painfully clear. On his 4th evening of practice, frustration finally overwhelmed him. "This is precisely what they desire," he muttered, slamming the sheet music down on the grand piano. "For me to fail publicly. Careful with that piano. It costs more than I earn in a year." The voice startled Kai. He turned to find Mr. Vance, the school's longtime custodian, standing in the doorway with his cleaning cart. His weathered brown face held a gentle expression despite his words. "Sorry, Mr. Vance, I didn't realize anyone was here." He quickly gathered his belongings, embarrassed to be caught in his moment of weakness. "Don't stop on my account," he said, moving to empty the trash can near the door. "I've been listening to you practice all week. You've got a genuine voice there, just not for that particular piece." His observation was so straightforward that Kai stopped mid-motion. "You know, music." Mr. Vance leaned on his broom, a small smile playing on his lips. "I should hope so. Taught vocal performance at Peabody Conservatory for 18 years before circumstances shifted." He said circumstances with a weight that suggested a story too heavy for casual sharing. "You're Elijah Rivers' grandson, aren't you? I recognized his techniques in your warm-ups." Kai's jaw dropped. "You knew my grandfather knew him, boy. Your grandfather had one of the most profound blues voices in New Orleans. We performed together at Preservation Hall back in '58. His eyes grew distant with memory. "The world lost something extraordinary when he withdrew from music." Kai approached him cautiously. "Why are you working as a custodian if you taught at Peabody?" Mr. Vance's smile faded slightly. "Let's just say the classical music establishment wasn't receptive to those who defied its conventions. A black man advocating for blues to receive equal academic standing didn't sit well with certain administrators." He nodded toward Kai's sheet music. "They're still playing the same games I see, setting you up with a piece no 13-year-old should be expected to master." The validation of his suspicions brought unexpected tears to Kai's eyes. "I didn't even sign up for this gala. They forged my signature, and now I'm stuck performing." "Tell you what," Mr. Vance said after a thoughtful pause, "if you're interested, I could help you prepare something that would astonish them all." His offer hung in the air between them, a lifeline Kai hadn't expected. For the next week, Kai met with Mr. Vance after school hours. He introduced him to breathing techniques that expanded his range and exercises that strengthened his vocal control. Instead of compelling him to continue with "Oh Holy Night," he helped him select "Wade in the Water," but with a blues-infused arrangement that highlighted Kai's natural gifts while honoring the hymn's roots. "This is still technically what they requested," he explained with a wink, "but performed in a way that respects both traditions." Kai felt his confidence growing with each session until Headmaster Thorne walked in during a particularly powerful run-through. "What exactly is transpiring here?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the auditorium. Mr. Vance straightened, setting down his sheet music. "Evening, Headmaster Thorne, just assisting a student prepare for the gala." The headmaster's eyes narrowed. "Custodial staff are not authorized to utilize school facilities for private instruction, Mr. Vance. This is a liability concern." His gaze shifted to Kai. "And you should be collaborating with Miss Jenkins on your assigned piece." Mr. Vance began to apologize, but Kai stepped forward. "Mr. Vance is a former Peabody Conservatory professor with more credentials than most of your faculty. He's helping me because Miss Jenkins assigned me a piece designed to make me fail." The words left his mouth before he could stop them, surprising even himself with their audacity. Headmaster Thorne's face hardened. "That's a grave accusation, Mr. Rivers and Mr. Vance. Regardless of your past experience, your contract does not include instructional responsibilities. This could jeopardize your employment status." The threat hung heavily in the air. "It's my fault," Kai said quickly. "I asked for his help. Please don't punish him for being kind." Headmaster Thorne seemed unmoved. "Both of you need to vacate the premises immediately. And, Mr. Rivers, I suggest you revert to the piece selected by your actual teacher." As they gathered their belongings, Kai whispered an apology to Mr. Vance. "Don't you dare be sorry," he responded firmly. "Standing up for what's right is never incorrect, but we'll need to be more discreet moving forward." The next day brought fresh challenges. Kai arrived at school to find his locker defaced with crude caricatures and racial epithets poorly disguised as musical symbols. Several students stopped to stare, a few snickering behind their hands. Liam immediately began helping him clean it off. "We should report this." Liam insisted, his face flushed with anger. "This is blatant hate speech." Vice Principal Miller, passing by during the commotion, barely glanced at the vandalism. "These adolescent hijinks are getting out of hand. The custodial staff will take care of it." His dismissal of the clearly racist imagery left Kai speechless. That wasn't a prank, Liam called after him. That was racism. His voice carried down the hallway, causing several teachers to poke their heads out of classrooms. By lunchtime, Liam's parents had telephoned the school, threatening to withdraw their substantial annual contribution unless the bullying was addressed. The administration's response was swift, but focused entirely on the wrong target. Kai was summoned to guidance counselor Mr. Davies' office, where he was asked if he was adjusting well to Blackwood's environment. Sometimes students from diverse backgrounds encounter difficulties with our academic demands, Mr. Davies said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. We aim to ensure you're not feeling overwhelmed, which might be contributing to social friction. The implication that Kai was causing the problem rather than experiencing discrimination was infuriating. That evening, Simone Rivers arrived home earlier than usual, her expression thunderous. "I just got off the phone with the school board president," she announced as she entered. "Apparently they're concerned about your adjustment and suggested you might be happier at a school more aligned with your community." Kai's heart sank. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to burden you with all this." Simone sat beside her son, taking his hands. "Son, never apologize for standing up against injustice. I told that president precisely what I thought about their thinly veiled suggestions." Her voice softened, but he did imply your scholarship could be re-evaluated if there are continued disruptions. The threat to his educational future should have silenced Kai. Instead, something hardened within him. That night, he pulled out his grandfather's old journals, searching for strength in his words. Among the yellowed pages, he found accounts of similar struggles decades earlier. Elijah had faced band leaders who refused to let him perform certain pieces, clubs that featured his guitar, but kept him from white patrons and music schools that rejected him despite his prodigious talents. One entry stood out: "They anticipate our silence or our downfall. The mightiest defiance is declining both." Do you believe Kai should continue battling the discrimination he encounters at Blackwood, even at the risk of losing his scholarship? Comment number 1, if you believe he should stand firm against injustice, or number 2, if you think he should focus on safeguarding his educational opportunity. What would you do if you were in his position, confronting both racial discrimination and the threat of jeopardizing your future? Hit that like button if you've ever had to choose between articulating your truth or staying safe, and subscribe to see how Kai navigates this impossible dilemma. Now, what unforeseen allies might materialize to assist Kai in his struggle against a system designed to muzzle him? The next day after school, Mr. Vance passed Kai a folded note while emptying trash cans in the library. 700 Soul Notes Books on Elm Street, it read simply. Kai recognized the address as a Black-owned bookstore in his neighborhood, far from Blackwood's pristine campus. He had no idea what to expect, but trusted Mr. Vance enough to be curious. When he arrived that evening, telling his mother he was attending a study group, Kai discovered the bookstore closed to regular customers. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Closed for private event," but the lights were on inside. He knocked hesitantly, and a young woman with closely cropped hair and vibrant earrings opened the door. "You must be Kai," she said warmly. "I'm Amara. Come on in." The bookstore's main area had been transformed. Chairs arranged in a circle occupied the center of the room, filled with faces of varying ages, all black, except for 2 older white women. Mr. Vance stood as he entered, gesturing to an empty seat beside him. "Everyone, this is Elijah Rivers' grandson, Kai." The introduction sent a murmur of recognition through the group. One elderly woman placed a hand over her heart. Elijah had a voice that could make the spirit soar. "How is he?" The question tightened Kai's throat. "He passed away 4 months ago." Sympathy filled the room. Several attendees shared memories of his grandfather that Kai had never heard. As the initial conversation settled, Amara took the floor. "Kai, we've been gathering like this for nearly 20 years. Every person in this circle has encountered what you're confronting at Blackwood." She gestured around the room. Former students' parents, even a few retired instructors who couldn't speak up while employed there. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair leaned forward. "I was class of '95 first black student body president. They attempted to invalidate my election by alleging my community service hours weren't structured enough." Another woman nodded. "They scheduled my scholarship interview presentation at 6:30 in the morning, claiming it was the only available slot. One by one, they recounted stories of systematic discrimination camouflaged as tradition or standards. The pattern was unmistakable and stretched back decades. Mr. Vance explained how the Winter Gala of Arts itself had originated. It wasn't always the classical music exposition you see today. The gala was actually established in the 50s by black artists from the community as a fundraiser for educational endowments. When Blackwood acquired the event, they gradually erased that history and the diversity of performances. Amara, who had been listening intently, stood again. "Kai, there's something you should know about me. I graduated from Blackwood in 2017. Like you, I was set up to fail at the gala." Her confident demeanor made it hard for Kai to imagine her vulnerable, but she continued, "They gave me an impossible classical piece, expected me to falter. Instead, I found allies," she gestured around the room, "who helped me prepare something unexpected. Now, I'm a sound engineer with my own studio," and her smile turned mischievous. "I'm returning to Blackwood as a judge for this year's gala." The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the group. The school administration doesn't know my background. They just see my industry awards and professional connections. Kai felt the first stirrings of hope. "So you'll be evaluating my performance?" Amara nodded, along with two alumni who might be more aligned with Blackwood's traditional values, but I have significant influence, particularly with the media and industry representatives who will be attending. The group spent the next hour strategizing with Kai, offering perspectives and practical advice. They discussed how he could honor both his grandfather's legacy and his own voice while technically fulfilling the gala requirements. As the meeting concluded, attendees shared contact information and offered ongoing support. One retired music teacher volunteered additional coaching sessions. Another, now a community organizer, left his card just in case. When Kai returned home, he felt less isolated than he had in months. The following day at school, however, reality crashed back with brutal force. Ashley and her friends had escalated their harassment. During Kai's practice session in the music room during lunch, someone had recorded him through the door, then heavily edited the audio to make him sound terrible. The doctored recording circulated through student phones by afternoon. In vocal arts class, Miss Jenkins assigned gala performance positions. "The lineup is arranged to showcase our strongest performers when most alumni are present," she explained, scanning her clipboard. "Kai, you'll be performing last at 9:45. The timing wasn't accidental. Most influential guests left by 9:00, especially those with early morning commitments. Kai would be performing for a nearly empty auditorium. When he pointed this out, Miss Jenkins smiled thinly. "If your performance is compelling enough, I'm sure people will stay." That evening, Kai received a text from his mother. "Need to talk when I get home." Something odd transpired today. When Simone finally arrived, her expression was troubled. "I received an anonymous call at work today. Someone suggesting I might want to advise you to withdraw from the gala if I valued my job security." His mother's voice was steady, but Kai could see the worry in her eyes. The caller mentioned his supervisor by name. Simone worked at a hospital with ties to several Blackwood board members. The threat was thinly veiled but clear. Liam called late that night, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "My parents had dinner with the Sutherlands tonight. They overheard something you should know." The Sutherlands were major benefactors whose son had graduated the previous year. Ashley's father threatened to withdraw his funding if his daughter isn't prominently featured in the gala. Apparently, he's been promised she'll receive the Exemplary Showcase Award regardless of how anyone actually performs. The corruption ran deeper than Kai had imagined. The following Saturday, Mr. Vance connected Kai with a former colleague who had access to Blackwood's archives. Together, they discovered photographs and programs from the gala's early years, confirming its origins as a celebration of diverse musical traditions. In one faded photograph from 1957, a group of black musicians stood proudly on the very stage where Kai would soon perform. Among them, to his shock, was a much younger Elijah Rivers. His grandfather had been part of the gala's true beginnings, a history Blackwood had deliberately buried. "They've been erasing us for generations," Kai whispered, tracing his grandfather's image. "This isn't just about me." With renewed purpose, Kai continued his secret preparations with Mr. Vance and their growing network of allies. Amara provided professional recording equipment to capture practice sessions, helping Kai refine his technique. The elderly man from the meeting who introduced himself as Mr. Thomas shared stories of performing with Elijah decades earlier. "Your grandfather had this way of making the guitar weep that made people feel every lyric in their soul." He demonstrated his aged voice, still carrying remarkable timbre. He called Itzul singing because it stripped away everything but the rawest emotion. Kai absorbed these lessons, incorporating them into his developing style. As the gala drew nearer, Ashley's clique seemed to sense something had changed. Kai's quiet confidence, despite their continued harassment, clearly unsettled them. Their tactics grew more desperate. Anonymous posts appeared on the school's social media pages, questioning how certain unqualified students had obtained scholarships. During a practice session, Kai discovered his backing track had been corrupted, forcing him to restart just days before the performance. Through it all, Kai maintained his focus, drawing strength from his grandfather's journal and his new circle of support. The night before the gala, Mr. Vance shared a final piece of information. "I've been doing some investigating," he said during their last practice session. Ashley's father isn't just threatening to pull funding. He's been promised a seat on the board of trustees if the gala successfully impresses certain alumni. The connection clarified everything. Headmaster Thorne's protection of Ashley, the predetermined award, the systematic effort to undermine Kai's performance. They weren't merely bullies. They were safeguarding their influence and social ascent. Kai returned home to find his mother waiting up, a rare occurrence given her exhausting work schedule. "Whatever transpires tomorrow," Simone said, embracing her son, "I want you to know how immensely proud I am of you for holding your ground." For the first time in weeks, Kai allowed himself to cry, releasing the immense pressure that had built up since this ordeal began. "I'm scared, Mom," he admitted, "but I'm more terrified of what happens if I let them triumph." Simone held him tighter. "Your grandfather used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's singing despite the tremor in your voice." As Kai finally drifted to sleep that night, he dreamed of his grandfather standing on Blackwood's stage singing with boundless joy, his voice carrying beyond the confines that had tried to contain it. Dawn broke with a gentle rain pattering against Kai's window, nature's own rhythm section accompanying his final day of preparation. He rose earlier than usual, moving through the vocal warm-ups Mr. Vance had taught him with deliberate care. His voice filled the small bathroom notes, rising and falling with new confidence born from weeks of intensive training. "Start from your diaphragm, not your throat," he remembered him instructing during their first real session after Headmaster Thorne's interruption. They had relocated to the basement of Soul Notes Books, converting the storage area into a makeshift studio with sound-dampening blankets and borrowed equipment. "Your grandfather grasped this," Mr. Vance had explained, positioning his hands on his shoulders to correct his posture. "Singing isn't solely about producing pleasant sounds. It's about channeling your entire essence through your voice." Those initial lessons had been foundational, focusing on breath support and control before moving to the more technical aspects of his performance. Kai had been surprised by how swiftly his natural talent responded to proper guidance. Notes that had seemed unattainable became accessible as he learned to utilize his full vocal instrument. Beyond technique, Mr. Vance had connected his voice to his heritage in ways school never had. "What you're doing springs from generations of musical tradition," he'd explained during a particularly frustrating session when he struggled with a difficult passage. "Our forebears used these songs to communicate, to safeguard their humanity when others sought to deny it. When you sing, you're not merely making music, you're perpetuating their resistance." This perspective transformed Kai's relationship with his voice. What had been a private pleasure became a profound connection to his identity and history. As he prepared for school, Kai carefully packed the outfit he'd selected for the evening's performance. Nothing ostentatious or stereotypical, but a simple dark suit with a single accent piece, his grandfather's vintage silver tie clip. The tie clip had been Elijah's signature during his performing days, visible in every surviving photograph of him on stage. Simone entered the kitchen as Kai was finishing breakfast, already dressed for work, but with dark circles under her eyes, suggesting another restless night. "I swapped shifts with Maria so I can be there tonight," she announced, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Nothing could keep me from seeing you shine." What Simone didn't mention, but Kai had overheard through a late-night phone conversation, was the escalating situation at the hospital. Following the anonymous threat, Simone had filed a complaint with HR about potential discrimination. Rather than investigating the intimidation, her supervisors had begun scrutinizing her work record with unusual intensity, clearly searching for reasons to discipline her. The parallel struggles they faced weren't lost on Kai. While he battled the gala setup, his mother fought her own war against workplace discrimination, both of them targeted for challenging systems designed to exclude them. The weight of this knowledge settled in Kai's chest as he arrived at Blackwood for the day's abbreviated schedule. Classes would conclude at noon, allowing performers time to prepare for the evening gala. The hallways buzzed with excitement, students discussing their routines, and the university representatives rumored to be attending. Ashley Sterling held court by her locker, surrounded by admirers, as she described her violin piece. "It's Beethoven's Spring Sonata No. 5, she announced loudly as Kai passed, the same piece they use in the Juilliard auditions. "Miss?" Jenkins says it's the most technically demanding selection in the gala. Her eyes locked with Kai's, triumph already gleaming in them. "Some people just comprehend the classics better than others. It's practically in our DNA." The comment drew knowing laughs from her circle, the racial implication unmistakable. Liam appeared at Kai's side, linking their arms protectively. "Ignore them," he muttered. "They're terrified of what you might actually do tonight." The school day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Teachers made half-hearted attempts at lessons, while students whispered about the gala. In literature, Mr. Hayes asked Kai if he was doing something contemporary for his performance, his attempt at showing interest, revealing his own biases. By the time noon arrived, Kai's nerves were frayed from the constant microaggressions and thinly veiled commentary. He retreated to the library's quiet corner for lunch, calling Mr. Vance to confirm their final preparations. "Amara's contact at the sound booth will ensure your backing track is ready," he assured him, and Mr. Thomas spread the word to everyone from the bookstore meeting. "They'll be there to support you, even if they have to feign they're there for other reasons." This last part referred to their contingency plan. After learning about the scheduled late performance time, Amara had mobilized their alliance to ensure Kai wouldn't sing to an empty auditorium. Former Blackwood Students community members and even a few local musicians had secured tickets, planning to remain, regardless of when other guests departed. As the afternoon progressed, Kai received an unexpected message from Liam. "Something's off with my parents. Call ASAP." When they connected, Liam's voice was tight with anger. "The Sterlings invited my parents to some exclusive pre-gala dinner with the board. When they declined because they're supporting you, Ashley's father implied it could affect my dad's firm getting any business from Blackwood families. They're literally threatening people's livelihoods over a student showcase." The revelation wasn't entirely surprising given what they'd already uncovered, but the blatant nature of the intimidation was shocking nonetheless. At 4:00, performers were instructed to arrive for final sound checks. Kai entered through the stage door garment bag draped over his arm to find the backstage area already buzzing with activity. Technicians adjusted lighting while nervous students practiced last-minute flourishes. Miss Jenkins stood center stage with her clipboard directing various aspects of the preparation with military precision. When she spotted Kai, her expression soured. "You're at microphone 3 for your sound check," she said curtly. "Try not to take too long. We have many performers to accommodate." The microphone assigned to Kai was positioned at the far edge of the stage, partially obscured by the grand piano. The placement would minimize his visibility to the audience, another subtle attempt to diminish his presence. During his sound check, Kai deliberately kept his voice restrained, revealing only a fraction of what he had prepared. Ashley, watching from the wings with narrowed eyes, seemed to relax slightly at what he perceived as an underwhelming rehearsal. As Kai left the stage, he nearly collided with Headmaster Thorne, speaking intensely with a man whose expensive suit and imperious bearing immediately identified him as Richard Sterling Ashley's father. Their conversation halted abruptly at his appearance, both men staring at him with poorly disguised disdain. Mr. Rivers' Headmaster Thorne acknowledged stiffly, "I trust you're prepared to uphold Blackwood's standards this evening." Mr. Sterling didn't bother with pleasantries. "So you're the scholarship student generating all the fuss," he remarked, looking him up and down, as if assessing a purchase he found lacking. "I understand you've chosen quite an unconventional approach to your performance." The comment confirmed they had informants aware of his preparation with Mr. Vance. Before Kai could respond, a commotion erupted near the stage door. Mr. Vance had arrived carrying a small case, likely containing last-minute materials for Kai's performance. Security personnel immediately approached him. "Sir, this area is restricted to performers and authorized staff," only one guard announced loudly. "I'm bringing equipment for one of the performers," Mr. Vance explained calmly, holding up the case. Headmaster Thorne strode over Sterling, following closely behind. "Mr. Vance, I believe I made myself clear about your involvement with the gala. You're not permitted backstage. As of this morning, you're on administrative leave pending review of your contract. Please leave the premises immediately." The announcement hit Kai like a physical blow. They had fired Mr. Vance for helping him. His face remained composed as security escorted him out, but the quick glance he cast in Kai's direction conveyed everything. Don't give up. This is precisely why you must continue. In the dressing room, Kai found his assigned space had been tampered with. His backing track, which should have been loaded into the sound system, was nowhere on the technician's playlist. The special microphone settings he had requested were ignored. Even his name on the program had been misspelled as Kai Rivers, an error too specific to be accidental. Alone in the restroom, Kai fought back tears of frustration. Through the stall door, he heard Ashley and friends enter, their voices echoing against the tiled walls. Daddy says if he tries making any trouble, his mother could lose her job at the hospital, Ashley was saying. The board president golfs with the hospital director every Sunday. Another girl laughed. Does he really think anyone wants to hear his street music anyway? The judges will probably wince. Miss Jenkins already informed me I'm receiving the Exemplary Showcase Award. Ashley continued, her voice smug with certainty. They're announcing it right after my piece, so the university scouts hear it before they depart. The casual cruelty, the sense of entitlement, the systematic way they had stacked every aspect of the gala against him nearly shattered Kai's resolve. For a moment he considered walking out, ending this charade before it could humiliate him further. Then his phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It was a photograph of his grandfather from what appeared to be a 1950s newspaper clipping. Elijah stood proudly on a stage silver tie clip, gleaming at his throat, with a caption partially visible, "Rivers electrifies crowd," despite attempts to stifle. The sender had added only 3 words, like grandfather, like grandson. Kai emerged from the restroom, transformed, a new determination hardening his features. In his dressing room, he unwrapped his grandfather's tie clip, pinning it carefully to his suit jacket. From his bag, he withdrew the final element of his preparation sheet music for a song he had discovered among his grandfather's personal effects. Not the hymn he had rehearsed with Mr. Vance, not the classical piece Miss Jenkins had forced upon him, but something far more powerful. A composition Elijah Rivers had written himself, but never recorded, titled simply Unchained Echoes. As performers began their final preparations, Kai sat quietly, centering himself through the breathing exercises he had practiced for weeks. Whatever happened tonight, he would not be silenced. He would honor his grandfather, his history, and his own voice, regardless of the consequences. The system designed to make him fail had unwittingly given him the perfect stage for defiance. The afternoon sunlight faded into evening shadows as luxury sedans and executive cars began arriving at Blackwood's circular driveway. Women in elegant gowns and men in impeccably tailored suits emerged, greeted by student ambassadors who guided them toward the Performing Arts Center. Unexpected among these arrivals was a local news van, its satellite dish extending skyward as a reporter checked her makeup in a compact mirror. Headmaster Thorne immediately approached the news crew, his smile strained as he inquired about their presence. "We received an anonymous tip about a groundbreaking performance tonight," the reporter explained, brandishing an official press pass. "Something about rediscovering lost musical heritage. Our culture editor thought it sounded like an excellent human interest story." The headmaster's expression flickered between confusion and concern. No media had been officially invited to the gala beyond the school's own photography team. Behind the curtain, performers peered through gaps at the arriving audience. Ashley Sterling stood center stage for her soundcheck, her sapphire gown catching the spotlight as she practiced a particularly difficult passage on the Steinway grand piano. Miss Jenkins hovered nearby, offering effusive praise for each flourish. When Ashley finished, she stepped off stage to immediate congratulations from her father and several board members who had arrived early for preferential seating. Kai watched this spectacle from the wings, clutching his folder of sheet music. His simple dark suit, with his grandfather's silver tie clip, seemed understated compared to the evening gowns and tuxedos worn by other performers. A staff member approached with a printed program, pointing to the updated performance schedule. "You've been moved to position 25. The woman said, without making eye contact after the scheduled intermission. This change would place Kai's performance even later than originally planned, well after 9:30, when most influential guests would have departed. "I see my name is still misspelled," Kai noted, pointing to the printed Kai Rivers on the program. The woman shrugged. "Too late to reprint now." As Kai turned to return to the dressing area, Headmaster Thorne appeared, blocking his path. "Mr. Rivers, a word." His voice was low but urgent as he guided him into a nearby unused classroom. "It has come to my attention that you may be planning to deviate from the approved performance piece." The information could only have come from someone who had overheard his conversations with Mr. Vance or seen his revised sheet music. "There are strict protocols for the gala," he continued. "Any unauthorized changes constitute a violation of Blackwood's honor code and could result in disciplinary action, including scholarship review." The threat was explicit, now no longer veiled in polite language. "I wasn't aware that the honor code required students to perform pieces selected specifically to ensure their failure," Kai responded, surprising himself with his steady voice, "or that it permitted forging signatures to compel participation." Headmaster Thorne's face hardened. "These accusations are serious and unfounded. I suggest you focus on representing Blackwood appropriately tonight rather than fabricating conspiracy theories." He moved toward the door. "Remember what's at stake here, Mr. Rivers? Not just for you." The implicit threat to his mother's employment hung in the air between them. Before Kai could respond, the door opened unexpectedly. Amara stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored suit, an official judge's credential hanging around her neck. "Headmaster Thorne, I believe we met briefly at the judge's reception." Her tone was professional, but her eyes locked with Kai's in silent communication. "The other judges are asking for you." Headmaster Thorne's demeanor instantly transformed into deferential charm. "Miss Johnson, of course. I was just providing some last-minute guidance to one of our performers." Amara's expression remained neutral. "I understand this young man is performing a gospel hymn. As someone who studies the preservation of cultural musical traditions, I'm particularly looking forward to his interpretation." The deliberately dropped information forced Headmaster Thorne into an awkward position. "Well, there may have been some confusion about the selected piece." Amara raised an eyebrow. "Confusion? The program clearly states traditional hymn under his name. Is there some issue with the student honoring his cultural heritage at an event meant to showcase diverse talents?" The headmaster found himself cornered by his own school's purported values of inclusion. "No issue at all. We simply have standards regarding preparation and approval processes." "I see," Amara replied coolly. "Well, I should mention that I've invited several colleagues from the National Association for Educational Equity who are particularly interested in how schools incorporate diverse cultural traditions. They'll be documenting tonight's performances for an upcoming educational journal." The implication was clear. Blackwood would be under scrutiny beyond their usual closed circle. Headmaster Thorne's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, we certainly welcome their professional assessment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I should greet the other judges." As he departed, Amara quickly closed the door. "They're trying to sabotage you at every turn," she whispered. "Your microphone had its sensitivity reduced, and they've instructed the sound engineer to keep your backing track volume minimal." She handed Kai a small flesh-colored earpiece. "This will let you hear the proper tempo, even if they mess with the sound system. My friend at the booth will ensure it works." Kai accepted the device gratefully. "They moved my performance to dead last after intermission." Amara nodded. "I know, but don't worry about that part. Our people will stay, and I've made sure the media knows not to leave early. Speaking of which, that news crew wasn't part of our plan, but it works in our favor." Their conversation was interrupted by a stagehand announcing 15 minutes until curtain. As Kai made his way back to the dressing area, he passed Ashley and her friends huddled near the stage entrance. They fell silent as he approached, exchanging knowing smiles. The Gala of Arts began promptly at 7:00 with Headmaster Thorne's welcome address emphasizing Blackwood's tradition of distinction and rigorous academic standards. The auditorium was filled to capacity with additional chairs added to accommodate unexpected attendees. From his position backstage, Kai recognized several faces from the bookstore meeting strategically dispersed throughout the audience. The first half of the program proceeded with meticulous precision. Classically trained cellists, pianists, and vocalists performed pieces from the Western European canon with technical proficiency that spoke to years of private instruction and privileged access to musical education. The audience responded with appropriate applause, board members nodding approvingly at performances that reinforced their vision of Blackwood excellence. During a brief technical pause, Kai slipped into the auditorium's back row to watch Ashley's performance scheduled as the final act before intermission. The audience hushed as Ashley took center stage in her sapphire gown, the spotlight creating a radiant effect around her blonde hair. She began Beethoven's Spring Sonata. With confident precision, her technique undeniably skilled, if somewhat clinical. As Ashley approached the piece's conclusion, something unexpected occurred. She transitioned into what she announced as my original interpretation of urban musical traditions, a jarring medley that incorporated crude mimicry of blues and gospel elements performed with exaggerated mannerisms, clearly meant to mock rather than honor the traditions. Gasps and uncomfortable shifting came from parts of the audience, while others, particularly board members and Ashley's family, applauded enthusiastically. The performance was a direct provocation, a public display of the private contempt Ashley had always shown towards Kai and his culture. As Ashley took her bows, Headmaster Thorne returned to the stage. "What a magnificent demonstration of versatility and creativity," he proclaimed, gesturing for Ashley to remain beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen, before our intermission, the judges have asked to make a special announcement." This deviation from the printed program raised murmurs throughout the audience. One of the judges, an elderly white man with a distinguished air, joined them on stage with an envelope. While we typically announce all awards at the conclusion of the gala, he began, the judges unanimously agree that we've witnessed such an extraordinary performance that immediate recognition is warranted. Amara, seated at the judges' table, appeared visibly tense, her expression suggesting this was not the unanimous decision claimed. This year's Exemplary Showcase Award goes to Ashley Sterling for her bold interpretive work. The announcement drew enthusiastic applause from the front rows where board members and benefactors sat, while scattered confusion appeared among audience members familiar with gala traditions. Awards had never been announced mid-event in the gala's history. During intermission, Kai returned backstage to find chaos. Liam rushed toward him, face flushed with anger. "Did you see what Ashley did? That was outright racist mockery." And then they gave her the award before anyone else could even perform. Before Kai could respond, he noticed his mother being stopped at the backstage entrance by security despite holding a valid backstage pass. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have no record of your authorization," the guard was saying as Simone showed her ticket and pass for the third time. "My son is performing. His name is Kai Rivers." Simone insisted, maintaining her composure despite the obvious discrimination. "There's no performer by that name on our list," the guard replied, glancing at a clipboard that Kai could see clearly listed performers by their last names, including Rivers, with the deliberate misspelling. Kai started toward them, but was intercepted by a stagehand. "You need to report for sound check immediately. There's a problem with your backing track in the sound booth." The technician appeared apologetic but firm. "Your file is corrupted. We can't use it. You can either perform a cappella or withdraw." The systematic sabotage was escalating with each passing minute. As intermission concluded, Kai stood in the wings, watching audience members return to their seats. Many in the front rows, including university scouts and influential alumni, did not return as predicted. They had seen the highlight of the evening and received the prearranged signal that nothing following intermission merited their attention. Kai felt a moment of deepest doubt. Every aspect of the system had aligned against him, his support removed, his performance undermined, his audience diminished, his very presence contested. The weight of institutional racism pressed down with suffocating force. As he considered withdrawing, a small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Are you Kai Rivers?" A young black boy, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, stood before him in a carefully pressed suit program clutched in his hands. "My mom brought me specially to see you. She said you're going to sing like our grandfathers did." The child's innocent expectation pierced through Kai's doubts. Beyond him stood an elderly black man who nodded encouragingly, their presence, a reminder of generations who had faced greater obstacles yet persisted. In that moment, Kai made his decision. Would you stand in Kai's shoes and continue with the performance despite all the obstacles placed in his way? Comment number 1, if you believe he should move forward with courage, or number 2, if you think the risks to his future are too great. Has there been a moment in your life when you had to decide whether to speak your truth, despite powerful forces trying to silence you? Hit that like button. If you're invested in Kai's journey, and subscribe to witness what happens when someone refuses to be silenced. Now, as Kai prepares to take the stage against all odds, will his voice rise above the systematic attempts to suppress it, or will Blackwood's discriminatory practices prevail? The second half of the gala proceeded with noticeably less enthusiasm from the performers and the diminished audience. Several students who had prepared diligently found themselves presenting to half-empty rows as predicted. Each time the auditorium doors opened, Kai watched hopefully for his mother, but Simone remained conspicuously absent, presumably still fighting for entry despite her valid ticket. As the penultimate performer concluded to polite applause, Miss Jenkins approached Kai with clipboard in hand. "You're next," she stated flatly. "Given the technical difficulties with your backing track, you have the option to withdraw without penalty." The offer dangled before Kai like poison fruit, the path of least resistance carefully prepared for his acceptance. "I'll be performing as scheduled," Kai replied, meeting the teacher's gaze directly. Miss Jenkins' mouth tightened with disappointment. "Very well. The sound team informs me you'll need to perform a cappella. I hope you've prepared accordingly." As the stagehand guided Kai toward the stage entrance, a small commotion erupted near the auditorium's main doors. A large group of people entered quietly, but purposefully, filling empty seats throughout the venue. Kai recognized Mr. Vance leading several faces from the bookstore meeting along with others he didn't know. They moved with coordinated precision, dispersing evenly through the space to create the impression of a full house. From his position in the wings, Kai could see Ashley's father rise from his front row seat, leaning to whisper urgently to Headmaster Thorne. The headmaster's face darkened as he surveyed the unexpected influx of audience members, clearly recognizing some as former students who had challenged Blackwood's policies in the past. Miss Jenkins stepped center stage, her voice tighter than usual, as she announced, "Our final performer this evening is scholarship student Kai Rivers performing—" She hesitated, glancing at her clipboard with apparent confusion, "a traditional hymn." The deliberate vagueness and omission of the specific piece highlighted their awareness that Kai had likely changed his selection. The spotlight remained dim as Kai took his position at the microphone. The sound technician had indeed placed his microphone at the far edge of the stage, partially obscured by the piano and with noticeably lower lighting than previous performers had received. As he adjusted the microphone to his height, Kai noticed a flash of movement near the auditorium's side entrance. His mother appeared finally gaining access with the assistance of an unexpected ally, Mrs. Sterling Ashley's mother, whose expression suggested disagreement with her husband's tactics. The small act of conscience from within the opposition camp bolstered Kai's confidence. He touched his grandfather's silver tie clip for reassurance as he faced the audience, noting the strategic positioning of Mr. Vance's network throughout the space and Amara's attentive presence at the judges' table. The accompanist looked expectantly toward Kai, waiting for his cue to begin the backing track that no longer existed. Kai leaned toward the microphone. Due to technical difficulties, he began his voice, initially soft, but growing stronger. "I'll be performing without accompaniment." From the front row, Ashley smirked victoriously, believing the sabotage had succeeded. Headmaster Thorne visibly relaxed, assuming an a cappella performance by a 13-year-old would be unremarkable at best, embarrassing at worst. Kai closed his eyes briefly, centering himself through the breathing technique Meister Vance had taught him. When he opened them again, he focused on a point just above the audience the way his grandfather had instructed in his journal, "Don't sing to them. Sing through them, beyond them, to the truth that needs hearing." The silence in the auditorium grew expectant as Kai's pause extended just beyond comfort. Then, without introduction or preamble, his voice emerged clear and powerful, filling the space with the opening notes of "Wade in the Water." The familiar hymn began, traditionally honoring its roots with appropriate reverence. Some audience members nodded appreciatively, while others appeared surprised by the quality of his untrained voice. From his peripheral vision, Kai noticed Headmaster Thorne checking his watch impatiently. He had begun exactly as they expected, a black student performing the spiritual music they had stereotypically assigned him. But as he concluded the first verse, Kai's performance transformed. His voice shifted into a blues-infused arrangement Mr. Vance had helped him develop, incorporating elements of his grandfather's distinctive style. The unexpected modulation drew murmurs of appreciation from musicians in the audience who recognized the technical skill required. Ashley's smirk faltered slightly as scattered applause acknowledged the clever transition. As Kai moved into the second verse, he departed further from tradition, weaving in melodic references to other freedom songs and spirituals, creating a musical tapestry that honored multiple traditions while remaining true to the core message of resilience and hope. Mr. Vance had helped him craft this arrangement specifically to showcase his natural talents, while demonstrating his understanding of musical history and theory, precisely the academic rigor Blackwood claimed to value. Audience members began leaning forward in their seats, engaged by the unexpected complexity of his performance. From the judges' table, Amara nodded encouragingly, while the other judges exchanged surprised glances. Kai's confidence grew with each note, his voice finding new strength and range as he immersed himself in the music. Just as the audience settled into this impressive but still relatively safe interpretation, Kai executed his most daring transition. The hymn melody faded as he shifted into his grandfather's original composition, Unchained Echoes. The piece began softly, almost a whisper, with lyrics that spoke directly to the experience of being systematically silenced, of having one's culture appropriated and dismissed simultaneously. The raw emotion in his voice created an immediate tension in the auditorium. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably as the message became unmistakably relevant to present circumstances. Headmaster Thorne straightened in his seat, his expression darkening as he recognized the performance had moved beyond what could be dismissed as merely a student showcase. This was becoming a public statement. From backstage, Miss Jenkins frantically signaled to the sound technician, drawing a finger across her throat in the universal sign to cut the microphone. The technician hesitated, glancing toward Amara, who subtly shook her head in warning. The performance continued uninterrupted. Ashley and her friends attempted to create a distraction from their front row seats, rustling programs and whispering loudly enough to be disruptive. Liam, who had positioned himself strategically nearby, stood and moved closer to the stage, effectively blocking their view and drawing supportive audience members to stand with him, creating a human barrier against the disruption. Kai's voice continued to build in power as he reached the heart of his grandfather's composition, a section that directly addressed the hypocrisy of institutions that claimed to value diversity while systematically suppressing it. His gaze moved deliberately across the audience, eventually settling directly on Headmaster Thorne as he sang, "You dread my voice because it carries truth. Your walls cannot confine." The headmaster rose halfway from his seat, clearly intending to interrupt the performance, but froze as camera phones throughout the audience turned in his direction, documenting his reaction. The news crew that had mysteriously appeared earlier had positioned themselves discreetly at the back of the auditorium, their camera recording everything. Realizing the potential public relations disaster of visibly silencing a black student performing music about systemic oppression, Headmaster Thorne slowly returned to his seat, his expression rigid with barely controlled anger. As Kai approached the final verses, his voice reached its full power, filling every corner of the auditorium with crystalline clarity. The years of singing privately in his bathroom, the weeks of intensive training with Mr. Vance, and generations of musical heritage flowing through his blood culminated in this moment of unrestrained expression. The composition concluded with a message not of defeat, but of resilience, not of victimhood, but of strength drawn from adversity. Kai's final note hung in the air, sustained with perfect control, until it faded naturally into silence. For several heartbeats, the auditorium remained absolutely still, the audience collectively processing what they had witnessed. Then, from the back row, Mr. Vance rose to his feet, applauding with deliberate emphasis. Amara joined immediately from the judges' table, standing to signify more than routine appreciation. One by one, then in waves, audience members rose applause, building from scattered recognition to thunderous affirmation. Liam whooped loudly from the front, joined by members of the community who had come specifically to support Kai. The standing ovation spread throughout the auditorium, encompassing even some who had entered as skeptics, but been genuinely moved by the performance. Conspicuously remaining seated were Headmaster Thorne, Miss Jenkins, Richard Sterling, and a handful of board members, their stillness a visual counterpoint to the surrounding enthusiasm. Ashley's face had lost all traces of smugness, replaced by confusion and the dawning realization that her mockery had been eclipsed by authentic artistry. From his position center stage, Kai finally allowed himself to scan the audience for his mother. He found Simone standing in the side aisle, tears streaming freely down her face, pride radiating from every feature. Their eyes met across the distance, a wordless exchange of love and shared triumph. As Kai took his final bow, the silver tie clip catching the spotlight that had mysteriously brightened to properly illuminate him, he understood that this moment transcended personal vindication. His voice had connected present to past, individual to community, performance to protest. In singing his truth, he had honored not just his grandfather, but generations of artists who had refused to be silenced. The morning after the gala, Kai awoke to the buzzing of his phone. Texts, social media notifications, and missed calls flooded his screen, most from numbers he didn't recognize. Liam had sent multiple messages, the most recent reading, "OMG, have you seen the news? They're calling you an overnight sensation," but completely missing the point. Simone entered with a mug of tea, sitting at the edge of Kai's bed. "You've caused quite a stir," she said, her voice carrying equal measures of pride and concern. "The school called this morning requesting we attend an immediate conference with Headmaster Thorne." She handed Kai her phone open to a local news website. The headline read, "Blackwood Academy unearths exceptional talent in scholarship student." The article featured a photograph of Kai mid-performance captured from an angle that made him appear small against the vast stage. While superficially positive, the story framed his success as a surprising anomaly rather than an indictment of the systematic barriers he had overcome. There was no mention of the discrimination he had faced, the sabotage attempts, or the broader context of his performance. Instead, the narrative positioned Blackwood as the benevolent discoverer of hidden talent in an underprivileged student. "They're trying to control the narrative," Kai realized aloud. "Make it sound like they supported me all along." Simone nodded grimly. Classic institutional response. Rewrite history before the ink dries. As they prepared for the meeting, Kai received a call from Amara. "Brace yourself," she warned without preamble. "They're in full damage control mode. The board held an emergency meeting at midnight, and they've developed a strategy to co-opt your success while neutralizing its impact." When Kai and Simone arrived at Blackwood, they found the administration building unusually active for a weekend. Staff moved purposefully between offices, expressions tense as they passed. Headmaster Thorne's secretary ushered them directly into a conference room rather than his office, where they found not just the headmaster, but a full contingent of school officials, the board president, the director of communications legal counsel, and Miss Jenkins. The overwhelming show of institutional force was clearly designed to intimidate. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Headmaster Thorne began, his tone artificially warm. "We wanted to congratulate Kai personally on his extraordinary performance last night. Clearly, he has a gift we didn't fully appreciate." The board president, a silver-haired man named David Thorne, leaned forward with practiced sincerity. "In fact, we're so impressed that we'd like to feature Kai in our upcoming fundraising materials. His success story perfectly exemplifies Blackwood's commitment to cultivating diverse talent. The patronizing language and transparent attempt to weaponize his success against the very cause he had championed left Kai momentarily speechless. Simone, however, was not so easily manipulated. "Let me understand correctly," she said, her nurse's calm masking building anger. "After months of discrimination, after deliberately setting my son up to fail, after threatening my employment when he refused to withdraw, you now want to use him as the poster child for diversity." Headmaster Thorne's smile tightened. "Miss Rivers, those are serious allegations without evidence. Blackwood has always supported Kai's development, as evidenced by his scholarship." The communications director interjected smoothly. "We see this as an opportunity to celebrate Kai's achievement while advancing our shared goals of increased representation in performing arts. We are prepared to offer Kai featured performances at upcoming donor events, potentially leading to valuable connections in the music industry." The implications were clear. Accept their narrative, become their token success story, and receive institutional benefits in exchange for silence about the discrimination he had faced. Before Kai could respond, the meeting was interrupted by an urgent knock. The secretary entered, clearly flustered. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Sterling is here with legal counsel. He's insisting on immediate attention." Headmaster Thorne's composed facade cracked slightly. "Please excuse me for a moment." He and the board president exited, leaving Kai and Simone with the remaining officials in uncomfortable silence. Through the partially open door, raised voices became audible from a nearby office. Defamation of character and targeted humiliation featured prominently in Richard Sterling's angry tirade. Apparently, Ashley's family was threatening legal action, claiming Kai's performance had deliberately embarrassed their daughter by highlighting the racist elements of Ashley's gala piece. The absurdity of this claim that calling attention to racism was more problematic than the racism itself perfectly encapsulated the environment Kai had navigated all year. When Headmaster Thorne returned, his expression had hardened. We'll need to continue this discussion another time. Some pressing matters require immediate attention. As they were escorted from the building, Kai and Simone found Amara waiting in the parking lot. I suspected they'd try something like this, she said, falling into step beside them. The good news is they're scared. Your performance revealed truths they've spent decades concealing. She handed Kai a business card with elegant lettering. I'd like to offer you a place in our summer intensive program for emerging male vocal artists. No strings attached, no institutional agenda, just genuine development of your gift. The offer was unexpected and generous, representing exactly the kind of opportunity Kai had hoped Blackwood would provide but never had. Yet even this positive development was quickly overshadowed by new complications. By Monday morning, the atmosphere at Blackwood had transformed. Teachers who had previously ignored Kai now called on him constantly in class, creating the appearance of engagement while effectively putting him under continuous scrutiny. Some students sought selfies with Blackwood's new star, while Ashley's circle escalated their hostility through deliberate isolation tactics. Miss Jenkins announced a special music department meeting where she emphasized the importance of technical precision over emotional expression in performances, a thinly veiled critique of Kai's gala piece. During lunch, Liam reported disturbing news gleaned from his parents' connections to the board. They called an emergency meeting last night about maintaining Blackwood's reputation. Apparently, some major benefactors are concerned about the political statement made during what should have been a neutral artistic showcase. More troubling was the email Simone received that afternoon from the scholarship committee requesting an academic review of Kai's standing. Despite maintaining a 3.9 GPA, his scholarship was suddenly under evaluation for concerns about academic focus, a transparent pretext for potential revocation. Mr. Vance remained on administrative leave, with rumors circulating that his contract would not be renewed. When students organized a petition for his reinstatement, they were warned about inappropriate involvement in administrative matters. The systematic backlash extended beyond Kai personally. Other Black students reported increased scrutiny from teachers and administration, as though Kai's act of resistance had triggered heightened surveillance of all minority students. Liam discovered through his father's connections that Blackwood was quietly planning to restructure their scholarship program the following year, effectively eliminating the diversity initiative that had enabled Kai's attendance. The gala recording, typically made available on the school's website, remained conspicuously absent, with the communications office citing technical difficulties when questioned. As pressure mounted from multiple directions, an unexpected alliance began forming. Parents of color whose children attended Blackwood reached out to Simone, sharing similar experiences of discrimination and expressing solidarity. Progressive white parents, including Liam's family, began questioning the administration's handling of the situation during board meetings and donor events. Local civil rights organizations took interest after the news story circulated requesting meetings with Kai and his mother. Meanwhile, Kai's performance found an audience beyond Blackwood's walls. Someone, likely a student, had recorded his gala piece and uploaded it to social media. The video gained traction when paired with Ashley's offensive interpretation of urban music, the juxtaposition highlighting exactly the issue Kai's performance had addressed. Music educators shared and commented on the technical skill demonstrated, while civil rights advocates pointed to the institutional response as exemplifying the very discrimination Kai had artistically challenged. The school's attempts to contain and co-opt his message were being overwhelmed by the authentic connection his performance had established with a much wider audience. This growing public attention brought new dangers. Anonymous threats arrived at the Rivers apartment, some containing racist language too vile to repeat. When reported to local police, the officers dismissed them as not credible, despite their explicit nature. Simone began receiving negative performance reviews at work for the first time in her career, with supervisors suddenly finding fault with practices they had previously commended. The price of speaking truth to power was becoming increasingly tangible, testing Kai's resolve in ways the gala itself had not. After a particularly difficult day when Ashley's friends had deliberately knocked his lunch tray to the floor while teachers watched without intervention, Kai found himself questioning whether the momentary triumph had been worth the sustained backlash. That evening, sitting at their small kitchen table, he voiced his doubts to his mother. "Maybe I should have just withdrawn like they wanted. Everything's worse now for both of us." Simone considered her son thoughtfully. Is it, though? The discrimination was always there, just hidden beneath polite smiles and institutional policies. Now it's exposed ugly and undeniable. She reached for Kai's hand. "Your grandfather used to say, the truth costs something because it's worth something. What you did forced them to show their true colors, not just to us, but to everyone watching." As they talked, Kai's phone buzzed with a notification. Mr. Vance had sent a message through Liam to avoid potential monitoring of direct communication meeting tomorrow. Same bookstore, 7 p.m. Important developments. The cryptic message suggested their alliance was mobilizing rather than retreating. By the time Kai arrived at Soul Notes Books the following evening, the gathering had grown considerably from their first meeting. The circle of chairs now extended through multiple rooms of the bookstore filled with current and former Blackwood students, parents, community activists, and even a few teachers who had risked their positions to attend. Amara facilitated the discussion, which quickly revealed that Kai's experience had catalyzed a broader movement. Documentation of discriminatory practices spanning decades had been collected. Legal experts outlined potential civil rights complaints that could be filed. Media contacts offered platforms for sharing the fuller story Blackwood had attempted to suppress. What had begun as support for one student had evolved into a coordinated challenge to systemic discrimination. As the meeting concluded, Kai found himself faced with a critical decision. He could accept Amara's offer of the summer program, focusing on his individual development while leaving Blackwood behind, or he could use his newly discovered voice and platform to push for institutional change despite the personal risk and uncertain outcome. The choice wasn't just about his future in music, but about what kind of artist and person he wanted to become, one who escaped the system or one who transformed it. 6 months after the Winter Gala of Arts, Kai Rivers stood before the State Board of Education, his voice steady as he addressed the panel of officials. No longer performing music but speaking truth, he presented the culmination of months of organized resistance against institutional discrimination. The documentation before you demonstrates a pattern of discriminatory practices at Blackwood Academy, spanning more than 35 years, he stated, gesturing toward the substantial portfolio each board member had received. These practices were not isolated incidents, but systematic efforts to maintain exclusivity while presenting a facade of diversity. The boardroom was filled to capacity with supporters, media representatives, and educational equity advocates. Simone sat in the front row beside Liam's parents, their presence a visible reminder of the coalition that had formed around what began as one student's stand against injustice. As Kai spoke, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment of potential transformation. Following the gala and subsequent backlash, he had made the difficult decision to use his unexpected platform rather than retreat from the spotlight. Working with the alliance formed at Soul Notes Books, he had helped organize a comprehensive documentation effort, collecting testimonials from current and former students who had experienced discrimination at Blackwood. Mr. Vance, rather than fighting his dismissal individually, had leveraged his decades of experience and connections to establish an independent music program specifically serving talented students from underrepresented communities. Operating from space donated by a local community center, the program had quickly attracted both students and volunteer instructors, creating the inclusive educational environment Blackwood had merely pretended to offer. "I found more students with extraordinary gifts in 3 months than Blackwood acknowledged in 35 years, he often remarked. Kai divided his time between regular lessons with Mr. Vance and working with Amara's summer program, developing his vocal talents, while simultaneously participating in the advocacy efforts. The dual focus had been challenging but necessary, reinforcing his understanding that artistic expression and social consciousness were inherently connected. One of the most surprising developments had come from an unexpected quarter. Ashley Sterling, whose mockery had initially triggered the entire sequence of events, had undergone her own transformation after her family's public disgrace. When evidence emerged that her father had explicitly encouraged her offensive gala performance as part of a strategy to undermine diversity initiatives, Ashley found herself facing uncomfortable truths about her role as an instrument of discrimination. 3 months after the gala, she had approached Kai during lunch away from her former friends. "I was wrong," she had said, simply her usual confidence replaced by genuine regret, not just about the gala, but about everything. "I never questioned what I was taught about who belongs where." The conversation hadn't immediately resulted in friendship, but it had opened a door to understanding that neither boy had anticipated. Ashley had subsequently provided valuable documentation about her father's interference in school operations, adding crucial evidence to their case. Headmaster Thorne and several board members had been forced to resign following an independent audit triggered by the mounting evidence and media attention. The audit had revealed not just discriminatory practices, but financial improprieties related to scholarship funds and admissions decisions. Ms. Jenkins had narrowly retained her position after agreeing to undergo mandatory bias training and curriculum review. Her classroom now subject to regular observation by educational equity specialists. Perhaps most significantly, Blackwood had established a transparent scholarship program specifically supporting students from underrepresented communities, named in honor of Elijah Rivers. The program included mentorship components, cultural competency requirements for faculty, and clear accountability measures, all changes directly resulting from the movement Kai's performance had catalyzed. As Kai concluded his presentation to the State Board of Education, he emphasized that their goal wasn't punishment, but transformation. "We're not asking you to close Blackwood or revoke its accreditation. We're asking you to implement statewide standards that prevent any school from maintaining systems of exclusion under the guise of excellence. Excellence should be recognized regardless of race background or economic status." The board's chairperson, a woman with decades of experience in educational policy, leaned forward. "Mr. Rivers, your advocacy has already resulted in significant changes at Blackwood. What specifically are you hoping the state board will implement beyond those local reforms?" Kai had anticipated this question. Blackwood isn't unique. Its practices reflect broader patterns throughout elite educational institutions. "We are proposing mandatory equity audits for all private schools receiving state funding or tax benefits, transparent reporting of diversity metrics and outcomes, and establishment of an independent review board for discrimination complaints." His response reflected months of collaboration with educational policy experts, civil rights attorneys, and affected students from multiple institutions. The comprehensive proposal represented not just a reaction to past injustice, but a vision for preventing future discrimination. Following the hearing, which would ultimately result in the board adopting many of their recommended policies, Kai participated in a benefit concert organized by Mr. Vance's new music program. The event, held at a prominent downtown venue, featured performances by students alongside professional musicians who had volunteered their talents in support of expanded music education in underserved communities. Backstage, Kai found himself surrounded by a community that had formed through shared purpose. Liam, whose friendship had remained steadfast through every challenge, helped arrange sheet music for younger performers. Amara discussed recording opportunities with talented students identified through Mr. Vance's program. Simone, recently promoted to department supervisor following an investigation into workplace discrimination at the hospital, coordinated volunteer medical support for the event. Ashley, still navigating her own journey of understanding, had convinced several former Blackwood classmates to attend in support. As Kai prepared for his performance, he reflected on how profoundly his life had changed since that terrifying moment when he first discovered his name forged on the gala participant list. What had been intended as humiliation had instead catalyzed both personal transformation and institutional change. His voice, once hidden in private moments, had become an instrument of both artistic expression and social justice. The new school year had begun with a transformed atmosphere at Blackwood. The incoming class reflected genuine diversity beyond token representation, with scholarship students visibly integrated into all aspects of school life rather than marginalized. Faculty underwent regular cultural competency training, and curriculum revisions ensured that diverse artistic and intellectual traditions received equal respect and attention. Kai had been approached by several younger students seeking guidance, particularly a talented Black 7th grader with promising musical abilities, but insecurities about belonging in the performance program. "They'll try to make you doubt yourself," Kai had told him during their first mentoring session. "They'll suggest that your voice doesn't belong in certain spaces or performing certain pieces." Remember that those limitations exist in their minds, not in your talent. The advice reflected his grandfather's wisdom, transmitted through generations, now extended to a new musical lineage. In the concert's closing segment, Kai debuted an original composition titled Unchained Echoes, developed during his summer training with Amara's program. The piece incorporated elements of gospel blues and classical traditions, honoring musical heritage while creating something uniquely contemporary. As he performed, he noticed a newly installed feature in the theater lobby, a historical display about the evolution of American music, prominently featuring a photograph of Elijah Rivers alongside other influential musicians whose contributions had previously gone unrecognized. The visual representation of his grandfather's restored legacy perfectly complemented the song Kai now performed in his honor. After the final notes faded and applause filled the theater, Kai remained momentarily on stage, absorbing the significance of the journey. The shy boy who had once hidden his voice had become not just a performer, but a catalyst for change. The cruel prank intended to expose him as an imposter had instead revealed his authentic power, not just as an individual talent, but as part of a community refusing to be silenced. As he took his final bow, Kai caught sight of his mother wiping away tears of pride. Beside Simone sat an empty chair reserved symbolically for Elijah, a small framed photograph marking his spiritual presence. At this moment of transformation, the journey had come full circle, from his grandfather's silenced potential to Kai's amplified voice, from individual struggle to collective resistance, from institutional discrimination to systemic change. What began as a moment of intended humiliation had become a movement of lasting impact, its ripples extending far beyond one performance on one stage in one school. Kai's voice, like his grandfather's tie clip, had become both personal treasure and public symbol, connecting past to future through the power of refusing to be silenced. Has Kai's story of resilience against discrimination resonated with your own experiences or opened your eyes to challenges others face? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If his journey inspired you, please hit that like button to help more people discover this important story. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice and finding your voice. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message of courage and transformation, share this video with them today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Unchained Echoes. May we all find the courage to speak our truth, even when powerful forces try to silence us. Kai's journey teaches us that true transformation begins when we refuse to be silenced. His story reminds us that systems of discrimination thrive in silence and falter when confronted with authentic voices speaking truth. What started as a cruel prank became a catalyst for institutional change because one young boy found the courage to honor his heritage rather than conform to others' expectations. The story illustrates how racism operates, not just through obvious hostility, but through subtle institutional barriers, rigged opportunities, lowered expectations, and the constant pressure to assimilate rather than celebrate cultural differences. These systems depend on victims internalizing the message that they don't belong. We learn that resistance requires community. Kai succeeded not just through individual talent, but by connecting with allies across generations who had fought similar battles. His grandfather's legacy provided historical strength, while contemporary supporters offered practical assistance. Artistic expression can be a powerful form of resistance. When traditional channels for addressing injustice are blocked, creative voices can break through barriers and touch hearts in ways that statistics and formal complaints cannot. Finally, we see that true victory isn't just personal success, but systemic change that opens doors for others. By transforming his individual suffering into collective action, Kai ensured his triumph would echo far beyond a single performance. Has there been a moment in your life when you had to choose between staying silent for comfort or speaking up for what's right? Share your experience in the comments below. If Kai's courage in using his voice against discrimination inspired you, hit that like button to help this story reach others who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice and finding your authentic voice in a world that often tries to silence it. And if you know someone facing their own Blackwood, a place where they're made to feel they don't belong, please share this video with them as a reminder that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Unchained Echoes. May we all find the courage to sing our truth even when facing a hostile audience.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.